Okay, so the challenge now is to come up with some statistical measure. So we need some statistics to evaluate the health of the USA, say over the past century or so. Well, one thing we can think of, there's a zillion things we can think of, but one we can think of, the hard end, we can say, is to look at mortality. Let's just look at mortality, arguing that if health is better, the mortality should go down. So we look at mortality, and if we look at the number of deaths, for example, then we'll come up with a graph that looks like this. So here are the number of deaths over the last 75 years or so. And we see that it's been going up. And that doesn't make sense. We think that health is getting better. So why is this making it look like it's getting worse? Well, of course, there are more of us. Population has increased tremendously. So the population has been going up. Of course, the number of deaths can go up at the same time as we're getting healthier, just because there's more of us to die. Okay, so what can we do? Well, what we can do is we can introduce a rate. Now, a rate has a numerator, which could be the number of deaths, and a denominator, which could be the population size. So like that, we can be correcting for the population size as it gets bigger. Then what makes this different from a proportion, say, is that this is per unit time. So for example, we could do it per year. So our unit of time could be 1 year. And then we can do the rate is for the year. If we do this, this will allow us to standardize. It makes comparisons more meaningful because we can. It takes into account the population size. This is what we call a crude rate. It's a single number summary of what's going on. But it does allow us to make these comparisons. So for example, here is Portugal, and this is for the mortality rate for 1 to 19 years of age. There's Portugal, and the population of Portugal is something like 10 million or so. So the US is 300 million. So there's Portugal, 10 million, 300 million. We can still, the comparison is still meaningful when we compare Portugal to United States, just as it is to compare it to Luxembourg, which only has like 500,000. So the population size doesn't matter in this. Now, when we do that for the US, here's what we see. We see that the crude death rate, namely if we divide each year the number of deaths by the population size, we get something that looks like this, and voila, it's going down, and this makes us happy. Okay, so this is deaths now. It's a rate, deaths per 100,000 population. It's actually per year too. We should add that's per year. So there it is, and so it's going down. Now, one thing I should note is that you might look at this and think of a proportion, thinking that the numerator is part of the denominator. There is no such restriction with a rate. So, for example, if we look at the number of colds, if we look at the cold rate, how many colds do you have per winter? You can have more than one. So this is, here you would have the number of colds, that's a C, and here you would have the population. And this, the average or the rate could be more than one, or flu, or whatever, anything that's recurring. So rates can be bigger than one.